the U.S. or the ceasefire that the U.S. promised Iran in this short period. We've noticed a lot of spoiling attempts, politically and militarily, being presented by the Israelis for the past few months. But also one cannot deny that this is one condition that is beyond the borders of the 10-point proposal. As much as one would believe and want to think that Iran wants to defend Hezbollah against Israel, one cannot deny it's a part of its regional proxy interest in the region, meaning Iran wouldn't sacrifice its own potential and its own national security and existentialism for the sake of defending Hezbollah and Israel if it were protect the domestic element of Iran against this war.
Right. Since the ceasefire, we saw almost every country come out and basically praise that a deal had been done, an end to the immediate conflict had been found. Obviously, there's deep concern now that this could change all of that, what we're seeing in Beirut. We've just got a joint statement from the UK, France and Germany, basically saying we call upon all sides to implement the ceasefire, including in Lebanon. How significant is it that all these countries that have come out and wanted a ceasefire continue to push for a full ceasefire, including in Lebanon?
Well, it's very evident.
And how do they get through to Israel to make sure that this doesn't continue?
It's very evident, and all these actors, international actors, are aware that this war wasn't limited to Iran. It was a regional conflict. It included a direct threat to many countries in this regional neighborhood, including the GCC, and more drastically in Lebanon, as Israel decided to conduct its military occupation against some Lebanese lands in south of Lebanon. They also are fully aware of the fragility of the ceasefire. It's perhaps too early to notice or claim any optimism towards it, given that this whole war from the first place was instigated during talks by the very same parties that are in conflict today. The military involvement of Israel and the military conduct of Israel in Lebanon is also very extremely significant. It's very dangerous. It's very risky to the extent that one may witness an influx of refugees to neighboring countries that just had it picked up for the past few years economically and politically, which eventually would lead to other regional actors getting involved directly.
Okay, Siaran, we'll leave it there for the moment, but we really do appreciate you once again talking us through all of this. Siaran Al-Kanani for us, a founding director of the Arab Perspectives Institute. We're going to go to Obaida Hito. He's live in Tyre in southern Lebanon for us. And given what we've seen in Beirut over the last hour or so, with hundreds of strikes there, can you just give us an update on what is happening exactly where you are? How are things playing out there?
Well, it's been about 2 hours since these strikes happened, and people here are in quite of a panic. The morning started out with strikes up north of Tyre into Sidon, a cafe that killed 8 people, and then throughout the day, people were wondering, is this ceasefire going to hold? Is Lebanon going to be included? But it soon became clear that Lebanon was not included. These statements came directly from the Israeli military. They released several warnings this morning leading up to this very massive countrywide strike. One of them included a building here in Tyre. A neighborhood called Abbasiyah was also targeted during this massive strike across the country. Several locations just in the vicinity of the city of Tyre, Qalayla, Haniyeh, Bazuriyeh, all of these locations just around the outskirts of the city of Tyre. There was 2 missiles that landed in the center of the city in the small peninsula that goes out into the Mediterranean Sea. People were actually hoping to be able to come back to these areas in southern Lebanon after the announcement of the ceasefire. There was some traffic headed from the north of the country to the south of the country since the ceasefire was announced overnight. But now it's become clear to everybody here there's no ceasefire. Israel has audaciously launched a new military operation here in southern Lebanon called Eternal Darkness, and people here are expecting a further escalation following these strikes. There are still people concerned about follow-up attacks on specific areas here in the city of Tyre.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Obaida Hito for us in southern Lebanon. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will travel to the Gulf on Wednesday. Downing Street says he will meet with leaders in the region in an effort to bolster the ceasefire. And in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed the deal, calling it a very good thing.
Regarding the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has announced its readiness to reopen it, which is a positive development. We have been working for several weeks to mobilize our partners in Asia, Europe and the region. Around 15 countries are currently mobilized and participating in the planning, led by France, to enable the implementation of a strictly defensive mission in coordination with Iran, when the conditions are right, to facilitate the resumption of maritime traffic.
We're going to go to Sonia Gallego now, who is standing by for us in London. And a joint statement has been released from the UK and EU. Can you just run us through exactly what it said in regards to not just the ceasefire in Iran, but Lebanon as well?
Well, indeed, there has been the statement that's come out just now, and it's a joint statement from the UK, France, Germany and the EU, calling for all sides to implement the ceasefire, and they underline the fact that that includes Lebanon itself. That their governments are also continuing to contribute to ensuring the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. But they're also saying that they're trying to encourage a quick process of negotiation, a substantial negotiation that's going to protect Iranian civilians and also ensure regional security. And those sentiments were also echoed by the British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, who said earlier this afternoon that while she welcomed the ceasefire, it was also time for an urgent end to the hostilities in Lebanon as well. So under no certain terms, all those parties, the British and the European parties as well, are also saying that Lebanon has to be part of this ceasefire.
And as we mentioned, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is heading to the Gulf. Can you just talk us through what he has planned once he's here?
Well, yes, it's come at quite a significant time. This was a trip that had been planned before the announcement of that ceasefire, but it is also quite an important timing as well. With that, he said he is going to visit British troops who are stationed in the region to give thanks to them for their efforts at intercepting drones that are attacking that.
What if your game's story could scale as fast as your player base? Juan turns a simple prompt into cinematic trailers, character lore, and live ops cutscenes. No render farm needed. Instantly localized in 119+ languages with native audio that keeps players immersed. Try Juan now. Get 50 200s free video generation per module.
We understand that JD Vance is going to head to Islamabad for negotiations with Iran. Can you just explain what he's been doing in Budapest and what he's been saying while he's been there?
Well, amidst all these latest developments, JD Vance was indeed in Budapest on a very different mission, actually. He was here in a show of support for Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who could lose for the first time in 16 years an election which will be held on Sunday. And I have to say, Vance had a lot to say about Orban and also about, for example, Brussels. He really lashed out against Brussels, the EU, saying that they were interfering here in these elections, while he himself was also now being accused of interfering in these elections because he was here endorsing Orban just 4 days before the vote. He also said that Orban is the only person who can make peace between Ukraine and Russia. So he was fully backing him. So there was a lot of talk about that. I watched him speak 3 times in the last 24 hours or so, and he barely touched upon the Iran war, but he did this this morning He said that, of course, he was up late on the phone the whole time, but he also said he called it a fragile truce. He said it really depends on which side in Iran you're talking to. There are people who are really willing to negotiate and come to the table, he said, but there are also people he mentioned on social media who he described as liars and cheaters. And he said the president has now asked them, the team, to go in good faith to come to an agreement, and hopefully that will succeed. But if the cheaters and liars, as he described them, will be most dominant, then they will make sure that they know that they're dealing with a president you can't mess around with. He says the choice is now up to Iran. This is what he had to say this morning during a talk at a conservative educational institution here in Hungary, quite a famous think tank as well.
Do you think that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump's support for Orban is going to make any difference here? What are the Hungarian people actually saying when it comes to this?
Well, it's very interesting, and it's, of course, really depends on who you speak to. Of course, during this campaign rally yesterday where Vance was appearing, and he had a very elaborate speech, I have to say. There were 5,000 supporters of Orban really cheering him on. But other people are really questioning if this outburst of support from the US is actually in Orban's advantage. He is not doing well in the polls. His contender Peter Magyar is heading in the polls, and Magyar is much more focusing on domestic issues. He's running an anti-corruption campaign at the moment. He's looking at poverty. Economically, Hungary is one of the poorest nations in Europe. So this is something that voters are much more concerned about than the geopolitics that Orban has been campaigning on. And the question is then, is the support of Trump and Vance, who also are, of course, involved in the Iran war, which is not very beneficial for Hungary at the moment because they're also paying more for fuel. So that's the question, if this is going to be an advantage. We will find out on Sunday.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Step Vassen, for us there in Budapest. Well, Israeli forces have been targeting homes and civilian areas across South Lebanon. An attack in Tyre killed 8 members of one family last month. One survivor is trying to preserve memories of his wife, daughter and other relatives who died in that strike. Here's his story.
I got some shopping and was coming back home. I got a little delayed on my way back. Then I heard 2 strikes, and my heart sunk. My heart felt they were gone. I came here. I saw the body parts on the ground. I saw my daughter's head there. My family was over there. It really hurts. Every day or two I come here. I check on things. I look around to find memories, to find the phone, to find anything that can soothe my heart and make things feel lighter. This is my family and Sarah. This is my wife, Sarah, and I. This is Sarah when she was younger. The strike that happened here was full of hate. It wasn't something normal. I don't know. All of this from the strike. All these marks are from the strike. There's nothing to see. Look how deep the missile fell here. As you can see, there's nothing. There's no trace of the house. Nothing. We found body parts here and there. There's not even rubble from the house. We were hoping that Sarah would start walking after 2 months and play like the other kids. Sarah is so precious to my heart, my daughter. I saw everything beautiful in her. And my family, I saw everything beautiful in them too. It feels hard to leave them here and go. I don't know. I feel the world is so hard, so cruel.
Hello there, I'm Nick Clark. Welcome to Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the ceasefire in the war between the United States, Israel and Iran. Israel is carrying out an intensive wave of attacks across Lebanon, hours after the US and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. 6 weeks of war and a chance for peace. President Trump says tariffs and sanctions relief will be discussed with Iran. The US Vice President will represent Donald Trump in talks with Iran's parliamentary speaker in Islamabad.
He's impatient to make progress. He has told us to negotiate in good faith, and I think if they negotiate in good faith, we will be able to find a deal. But that's a big if, and ultimately it's up to the Iranians how they negotiate. I hope they make the right decision.
World leaders welcome the agreement after 6 weeks of war squeezed the global economy and killed more than 2,000 Iranians. So then, hours after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Lebanon is not included in the 2-week truce between the United States and Iran, Lebanon has come under intense Israeli assault. Israel says it's the biggest attack since the war against Iran and Hezbollah began, and that was at the end of February. Hezbollah has so far refrained from launching any rockets across the border since the deal was reached. In the last hour, Israel has been carrying out multiple airstrikes on Beirut's southern suburbs. The assault targeted densely populated residential areas, causing extensive damage. The Lebanese Health Ministry says hospitals are overflowing with victims. Southern Lebanon has also come under repeated attack since the US-Israeli ceasefire with Iran. And this includes a strike on the southern city of Tyre after Israel issued forced evacuation orders for people living there. Israel's attacks and expanding invasion in the south of Lebanon has forced 1.2 million people from their homes. And overnight, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 8 people, and that was in the coastal city of Siaran, also in the south of Lebanon. Well, we've got correspondents in Tyre in Lebanon, in Dubai, in Ramallah, in Washington, D.C., and indeed in Tehran. But first, let's go to Malcolm Webb, standing by for us in Beirut. So, Malcolm, there we've had huge impacts and in areas not normally targeted. What are you seeing?
Well, it was just under 2 hours ago we heard a series of enormous booming explosions coming not just from the southern suburbs, but from several other parts of the city within seconds of each other. After that, we could hear military jets in the sky, and then panic and chaos ensued in the streets in multiple locations. As you mentioned, many of the places that were hit were places where people were not expecting it at all. Throughout the 6 weeks of this conflict, Israel's issued repeated forced evacuation orders for the southern suburbs. It's known to be a Hezbollah stronghold. Most of the population has been evacuated from there since the beginning of March. But on this occasion, the Israeli military had earlier today issued warnings for the city of Tyre and also for Beirut's southern suburbs, not for the several other locations across the capital where these weapons hit. And so the streets were filled with people, some of them injured, running to try and get help in the hospitals, children crying, people abandoning their cars in the traffic, and the wailing of sirens of ambulances has been almost constant ever since.
All right, Malcolm, back with you a bit later. Malcolm Webb there in Beirut. Let's go to the south of Lebanon, to Tyre, in fact. Abeda Hitto is standing by there. So, Abeda, the south, of course, of Lebanon has borne the brunt of Israeli attacks with wide-scale forced evacuations. What's been happening there today?
Absolutely. Just around 2 hours ago, there was a series of strikes here in Tyre and around Tyre. People were expecting a specific building that was threatened earlier on the day by the Israeli forces to be hit, but it turned out that this was part of a larger countrywide attack by Israel. Just around the city of Tyre, there were at least 8 strikes at the same time, just seconds after one another. What I understand from locals here is that there were as many as 30 strikes from here in Tyre all the way north and east towards Sidon, all at the same time. The general security here in Lebanon has called on people to not go out into the streets and to not get close to these areas that were targeted. There are a huge number of injured people here in Tyre. We're waiting to get official confirmation from the local authorities about the number of people injured and killed in these strikes, but definitely a surprise for people in Tyre, in southern Lebanon especially, who are hoping that this ceasefire would hold and that Lebanon would be included. But Israel has since audaciously announced a new operation in southern Lebanon and saying that they're going to continue to target Hezbollah until that threat is neutralized.
And Beda, earlier today we were seeing pictures of people returning, displaced people returning to their homes. What are the implications for that return given this violent uptick?
Well, that's going to have a serious impact on people's decisions on whether they should come back or not. Some people did start to leave the northern parts of Lebanon and come towards the south overnight. But first of all, they're going to have difficulty crossing the Litani River, especially if they're trying to come to these southern areas around Tyre and then throughout the rest of the country towards the east, towards Khiyam and Taiba. The bridges that cross and connect over the river, that connect the north and south of the country, have been damaged or destroyed. So there are very few options. So that's going to create a lot of traffic. But I think that after these strikes, we're not going to be seeing that reverse migration. We've even heard Lebanese officials warning people, as well as Hezbollah warning people, telling them to be patient and to show restraint before trying to make the trip back to southern Lebanon. It's not clear whether or not Lebanon is actually going to be part of the ceasefire, but definitely the sense here is that it's not going to be. Things are very tense, and this has gone on since the beginning of March. It's 6 weeks now. 1.2 million people are displaced from their homes. The death toll here in Lebanon is now way above 1,500, which it reached yesterday. But with the death toll rising after today's widespread attacks, I think that this is going to be a turning point for Lebanese people in deciding on how they want to move forward. We heard from the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam saying that no other country negotiates on behalf of Lebanon, but it's questionable about how much leverage Lebanon actually has right now in this conflict and whether or not Hezbollah is actually going to back down and not carry out any more attacks against Israel.
All right, Abeda, thanks for that. Abeda Hitter there in Tyre in southern Lebanon. Let's cross to Ramallah. Nora Day is following developments from there in the occupied West Bank. So, Nor, Israel, it seems, determined to continue on the Lebanese front and with devastating consequences today in Beirut.
Unprecedented, really, perhaps since 1982 and the Israeli invasion of Lebanon back then, Nick. There were 100 airstrikes in the span of 10 minutes, many targeting areas in Beirut that wouldn't be traditionally seen as in any way related even to Hezbollah. Now, this has a backstory to it regarding the internal dynamics in Israel. There is a claim of responsibility that one of the targets may have been a makeshift headquarters for the head of Hezbollah, but that really is to speak to the base and to the detractors of Benjamin Netanyahu, who are livid. We've heard all day criticism telling the public that Benjamin Netanyahu has brought a resounding defeat to Israel, that what is happening, what was agreed on in relation to Iran, puts Israel in the corner, even leading political figures calling the Israeli Prime Minister a coward and a liar in public statements. Now, all of that brings back into focus the Lebanese front. This is up close and personal for Israelis. It has cost them more in terms of lives, in terms of casualties, than the war front with Iran. Actually, and ending it abruptly without being forced to would be devastating in political terms. And that's why we're seeing those statements from the Israeli government and the military that they will escalate their attacks against Hezbollah, that they will not accept this tying of the fronts so to speak, between Iran and Lebanon, because this is Israel's backyard in strategic terms, and Israel wants to dictate the way that war front ends because it didn't have a say or much of it on the Iranian front. Nick?
Nor, thanks for that. To speak again in a little bit, Nora Day there in Ramallah. Well, US President Donald Trump says many of the 15-point peace proposals with Iran have already been agreed to. It comes hours after the United States and Iran agreed to a 2-week pause in fighting. And in the past hour, Trump has posted on social media saying that the United States will work closely with Iran, which we have determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. There will be no enrichment of uranium, and the US will, working with Iran, dig up and remove all of the deeply buried nuclear dust, as he put it. It is now, and it has been, under very exacting satellite surveillance. Nothing has been touched from the date of the attack. We are...
Are you going nuts trying to do designs for Amazon, TikTok, and Instagram? There's a super easy way to get all your stuff done. Just chuck up one product pic and the AI will whip up posters for you, just like that. You get free credits every single day.
Tahu nggak, penghasilan affiliate aku udah segini, padahal cuma pakai satu website gong ini. Kenapa aku bilang website ini gong banget? Karena kalian bisa riset produk, kalian bisa cari produk terlaris dengan sales paling tinggi. Kalian juga bisa riset komisi. Ini penting banget cari komisi yang penjualannya lebih dari 5% plus volume penjualannya yang tinggi. Bahkan kalian bisa cari barang dengan filter sedetail ini. Lalu kalian juga bisa cek riset konten. Kalian cari konten dengan angka sales paling tinggi sebagai bahan referensi. Di sini ada banyak banget data konten dengan sales sampai 3 digit. By the way, aku pakai website Fastmost atau kalian bisa klik yang ini. Pas daftar jangan lupa masukin kode aku biar dapat diskon 10% ya. Dan kalau kamu mau coba dulu ada member gratis kalau kalian daftar dari link ini ya. Good luck dan selamat mencoba.
Extremely skeptical of, and that the majority were not in support. So this is going to be a hard sell for the U.S. president, given the fact that Iran's basic leadership structure is still intact, uranium enrichment is still there and in Iran, and as the U.S. president put in that post, still has to be addressed. And now we know that there have been sanctions that have been lifted, at least for the moment. And as well, there are now tolls being charged to go through the Strait of Hormuz, something that didn't exist before this conflict. So there is going to be a lot of questioning in the United States about why this happened, what was achieved, and already Donald Trump's Democratic political opponents are seizing on this, saying, in fact, that this was expensive, this was pointless, and it was also a strategic defeat.
Kimberly, thanks for that. Kimberly Harker there at the White House. Well, the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, is expected to hold direct talks with Iran. That'll be in Islamabad on Friday. Let's have a listen to what he's been saying.
If the Iranians are willing, in good faith, to work with us, I think we can make an agreement. If they're going to lie, if they're going to cheat, if they're going to try to prevent even the fragile truce that we've set up from taking place, then they're not going to be happy. Because what the president has also shown is that we still have clear military, diplomatic, and maybe most importantly, we have extraordinary economic leverage. So the president has told us not to use those tools. He's told us to come to the negotiating table. But if the Iranians don't do the exact same thing, they're going to find out that the president of the United States is not one to mess around. He's impatient. He's impatient to make progress. He has told us to negotiate in good faith. And I think if they negotiate in good faith, we will be able to find a deal. But that's a big if. And ultimately, it's up to the Iranians how they negotiate. I hope they make the right decision.
OK, let's bring in Ali Hashim, who joins us live from Tehran. So that was J.D. Vance, the US Vice President. And Iranians have always been keen, haven't they, Ali, to deal with the US VP in terms of any potential ceasefire talks and negotiations. And it now looks as if that may well be happening on Friday.
Well, for now, yes, this seems to be the date, Friday. However, there are a lot of issues that seem to be shaking this framework. at least expectations. Yesterday, things were based on, according to President Trump, were based on the 10 points proposal that Iran presented, and that make good basis for negotiations. And Abbas Araghchi, Iran's foreign minister, saying that his country will consider the 15-point proposal by the U.S. However, what we heard today from the American War Secretary about the zero enrichment that is actually refused and has been refused on several occasions. And actually this war happened because the Iranians did not accept to give up on enrichment. Also, the highly enriched uranium that is buried under one of the facilities in Isfahan. Beside that, there are other issues. And now with the Lebanon escalation and Iran insisting in the past days, especially on the mediators, that Lebanon should be part of this ceasefire. Now with what Israel is doing there are many reasons to think that this path isn't really going smoothly. It could face a lot of hurdles, and it could at any time collapse.
Yeah, and tell us more about that. What is the thinking there? Is it because it would put pressure on the Iranians to respond because of Israel targeting more Hezbollah sites in a more aggressive way, or what is the calculation exactly?
You know, the main issue is that Lebanon was a front among several fronts in one war, and that war was the war on Iran. Israel and the U.S. started the war on Iran, and then Hezbollah entered this war. So at the end, there is a situation where Lebanon now is paying this price at the moment with Israel attacking and not committing to the ceasefire. So Iran sees itself on one side as responsible for these fronts, given the fact they are allies, they are all under the same umbrella of the axis of resistance that Iran leads. So now we are still waiting to see official stances from Iran. There are no official stances except for the ambassador in the UN, who said that there will be some consequences. However, what are these consequences? Are these consequences going to elevate to a kind of a level that could put the whole path in risk? This is the big question.
All right, Ali, thanks for that. That's Ali Hashim there in Tehran. Let's take this on here in the studio now with Zaidan Al-Kanani. He's the founding director of the Arab Perspectives Institute. Zaidan, great to have you with us. So that initial relief, the 2-week pause, has now diminished, hasn't it, with news out of Lebanon of these huge strikes with, at this point, untold casualties. What do you think is Benjamin Netanyahu's calculation here?
It's unfortunately expected. Benjamin Netanyahu seems to have been the earlier instigator of this war from the very forefront, as previously discussed, and noticed by many regional and international actors pointing the fingers at Israel, but focusing directly on the US and Iran, given that they seem to be at the forefront of the conflict. There is always a clear indication that Israel wants to ensure that any future of the status quo of this conflict will recognize Israel's expansionist agendas and ambitions in the region, which includes the weakening of the Iranian political leadership today. Now, it seems like the progress which led to this very fragile 2-week ceasefire is based on negotiations that were mainly focused on the bilateral talks, but obviously mediated by the Pakistanis and other regional actors, focusing on both interests of both Tehran and Washington.
But not Israel.
But not as much Israel.
Right.
Which is a huge danger to Israel. It's a massive risk to Netanyahu, as he's noticing that Trump's administration is perhaps realizing the risks that this war has presented to them by allowing themselves being pushed by the Israelis, economically and politically.
Sure, you talk of the massive risk to Netanyahu himself and his political position, but expand on that, if you would. What is the context of that? Why does it create risk for it? Why does a ceasefire cause trouble for him?
It causes trouble for him because it ends up putting Iran in a much more stronger position. If the war were to end today or in 2 and 3 weeks with the remaining of the current Iranian regime, they will have gained political leverages that they didn't have before, such as the Strait of Hormuz. The limitation of their proxy network in the region wouldn't be focused upon as much, given that new cards have been on the table, which is the Iranian direct targeting and threatening of the existential national security of the GCC countries. The conversations before towards their potential stockpile uranium and their ballistic missiles doesn't seem to be at the forefront of the priorities of the Americans anymore. If anything, if this war